Oseo.
Oseo.
Cherokee greeting. Wave the great feather. Aho, aho, like that. First thing we're looking at here is this kind of a map here of the showing that the United States like that. And it has all the names of the First Nations on this. When I was a boy, we had a map something like this up in the house. Fascinated me no end, you know. This one's real particular because here the title is Tribes of the Indian Nation. And what we now call this nation is Turtle Island. That we are one united nation of the turtle. So all the names of everybody is here. And we're all still here, more or less, one way or the other, but we are all still here, like that. This area here on this map is the only lakes that are delineated. We call these the Great Lakes here. You can see that. And so with that, let me go over there to Michigan. So this is pretty interesting because see Michigan, it says from the Ojibwe, Michigami, meaning great water. Now, Claudia Pokwak, who is doing the filming and the camera here, is quite relevant here because down here is Lake Erie, and this is her birthplace. And she said, you know, she grew up here around Lake St. Clair, in all this region. Her father is a native of Ontario, Canada, just across the border here, and he was a boatman, and she grew up on his boat. And I also had the opportunity over here to be on his boat and did drawings of her, of Claudia, on her boat. So we see all of this is, you know, ancient part of Turtle Island, Native America. And that gives me an introduction to my subject here. The subject here is about the Taos Blue Lake. Last week, my talk was the blue smell of summer. So I had everything here was all blue. Everything was all in blue. Well, the next day, like exactly a week ago, Monday, the Indian Country Today published an article, and that has become my prompt here. And that article, Indian Country Today, was a news magazine that I subscribed to for a while until they have switched over to being on, what do you call that, the Facebook or the computer. You can get the Indian Country Today there. The title for this is Remembering the Return of Blue Lake. July 8th celebrates the first land back and a new day for American Indian, it says here. The Taos singers and the Taos Pueblo performed the remembering of the return of Blue Lake to the Taos Pueblo. It was an event at the University of New Mexico on July 8, 2022, more than 50 years after President Nixon pledged his support for the return of the Blue Lake. And so that's what the article is here, and it, you know, just to get the summation of it, written by, you know, Mark Trent. July 8th should be a holiday. It could be called Self-Determination Day or Blue Lake Day, or the name once given to this celebration at the Taos Pueblo was also called Justice Day. A commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the events of July 8, 1970 was held as a hybrid event at the University of New Mexico. This celebration was delayed because of 2 years because of the COVID. We all know about that. And Mr. Suzal is a member of the Taos Pueblo Council, and he's remembering the return of the Blue Lake to this pueblo because it reminds us of the significance of what happened. You know, he says, the return of the Blue Lake, our beautifully and culturally important land, took over 64 to 90 years of our people's energy and dedicated efforts against complex legal things. You know, this was the first time the federal government returned land wrongly taken from an Indian tribe. The story includes, you know, the Blue Lake was taken by the federal government and added to its national forest lands in 1906. This was extraordinary for different reasons, but most important, the loss of the Blue Lake made it impossible for the Red Willow people, that's who the Taos people are, to practice their culture. In 1970, that leadership included, you know, these guys, you know, including, you know, the governor and so forth. A great victory did not come easy, they said. It took generations of our people's energy, stress, strong will, and persistence to achieve the victory. It took the great patience and strong determination of decades of tribal governors, war chiefs, and tribal councils to continue to fight for 64 years until victory was achieved with a return of the Sacred Path area in 1996 that was omitted from the initial return of the Blue Lake area. It was an overall 90-year effort. The victory by Taos is a victory for all indigenous people. It is the first time, of course, that land has been returned to an Indian tribe. It wasn't the last part of what those old whitey senators were scared of. The precedent to give one piece of land back, everybody will want their land back. And those senators were right, of course. And the Blue Lake is a symbol of the power of that eventual justice. And an anecdote on that, I had a Chevy pickup truck with a camper shell. We visited some friends up in Coyote, Navajo friends. We is Claudia, the native of Lake Erie, and my daughter, May, visiting there with us. And then from the Navajo country, we did end up over there in Taos. We were up in Colorado. We came down there, had great breakfast at the Durango Cafe. Best breakfast I ever had. And then it goes right on down into Taos. And in those days, it didn't seem there were many people around, not wherever we were. And I drove right into the Pueblo, right up there. They were like little ramadas like that. And as soon as I got there and stepped out of my truck, you know, a young Native man, you know, walked up to me cheerfully and just said straight out, "We got back our Blue Lake." So there it was being announced to me, Coyote, right away. Subsequently, we went up, there's a stream that comes from the Blue Lake, which is high in the mountains, and it comes down to the Pueblo. And we camped up there alongside that stream. It's all very forested. And my daughter, May, was in need of a name that would be right for her. And of short, you know, we came up with a name, and that was Walking Bear Woman. Subsequently, we seem to have found somewhere thereafter a little ring with a bear paw on it that she could wear to, you know, remember her name. So, you know, that's a bit of an anecdote there. So that's how we're starting here. If you can go up here and see it, here's an illustration. This is actually the logo from Taos of the Blue Lake. I think it's very suggestive, you know, in the femaleness of it here. But the bare mountains makes it look like in a desert, but actually it's very, very forested here. But anyway, that is the logo for the Blue Lake from Taos. And then I want to go down here and see these two eagle feathers here. That is a symbol, you call it that, these twin eagle feathers, a symbol of the founding of the Pueblo of Taos, as I remember it. And I've put them here in this little pot. This is an Acoma pot. Acoma is called Sky City painted pot. It's about 1950 there. So here's a little bit more information that tells about, Blue Lake. I'm reading it directly. Blue Lake and the Rio Pueblo de Taos have long been the life force for the people of Taos Pueblo. In addition to the obvious necessity the Pueblo community has for a consistent supply of water, Blue Lake has been even more crucial spiritual significance for the people. The lake itself is located about 20 miles north of the Taos Pueblo in northern New Mexico and is the site of annual pilgrimage and ceremony. However, until a 1971 congressional decision finally returned the lake, really returning it, and surrounding lands to the Pueblo people once and for all, the sacredness of Blue Lake was threatened by increased forestry in the area, demands for water, and increased public traffic as roads were constructed by the U.S. Forest Service. Situated in the thin air at 11,800 feet, Blue Lake is a stunning turquoise color and has been the site of Pueblo spiritual reverence since time immemorial. The annual August pilgrimage is undertaken by the Pueblo people on foot or horseback, and it takes roughly 2 days to cover the 20 miles of uphill, dense forest trail. The lake is known in Kiwa, the Pueblo language, as Mawalo. The tribal leader states, "Blue Lake for our life is living. Blue Lake is where the spirit of the Indian spirit is still living today. We go over there to pray, and we go over there to worship. The stars and the moon and the sun and the sky and the clouds and the air and whatever nature has provided for us. We do believe this." Pueblo spirituality also considers the lake to be the source of all life, as well as the repository for all the deceased souls. The lake and all of its associated meanings are crucial to Pueblo cultural spiritual life and the survival of these communities as a whole. Okay, that's a very, very, very good description here. And so my theme is expanded from the Blue Lake into lake itself. I don't know of anywhere in European America, can I refer to it that way, that a lake is considered anything but water for whatever they want to use it for. I don't have any notion at all of lakes being regarded spiritually, sacredly, or anything like that. But here in Turtle Island, Native America, lakes are very significant, very spiritual, and feminine also. Some of my lake experience, I want to say, since I just finished this, Michigan, I was a graduate art student in Mexico. My project there my project was actually the history of Mexican art. And we had a satellite campus there, wonderfully in a location called Lake Pátzcuaro. Lake Pátzcuaro is in the state of Michoacán, which is very similar to Michigan. It's a place of of lakes, basically. And the one lake that I know is Lake Pátzcuaro. And like I said, we had a satellite campus there. We were affiliated with the university nearby. And the people who live there are Tarascan. That's what they're named. They were formidable contenders to the Aztec Empire and resisted any Aztec assimilation. And even when the Spaniards came, likewise. So they were very, very strong people. It's still there. In fact, when I was in the classroom up in Nevada, I had two boys there that their grandfather still lived there at Tsinghua, the Tarascan capital at Lake Pátzcuaro. So that was pretty wonderful. I also lived, again, as a student, I had to get permission from the government with a Tarascan family there. And so I became acquainted with, the best way I can do it, with the true spirit of the lake. And the one illustration I have for that is over here, this black mask. This is a finely black lacquered mask that would be used in the celebration of the diosa de lago, the goddess of the lake, in that way. And of course, while I was there, I did drawings, which the family people also looked at my drawings of her. So that's my one reference here for Lake Pátzcuaro, which is feminine. All the lakes are all feminine in that way. So we can go, let's go up here. I have this piece up here to, stand for basically the spirit, the feminine spirit in any lake, all lakes. So that's the way I have this here to go with this piece here. This is my painting, and what the painting is about is ancient Lake Cahuilla, is the modern name given to out east of San Diego. It was a very, very large lake. It actually originally was an extension of the Sea of Cortez all the way up to Indio, and gradually the Colorado River silted it in, and it ended up an independent resident of the larger body of water. The name Cahuilla, again, is an American name for the Bulueta, the original people. And the language I become acquainted with for this lake, is called Kamiyahuishi, meaning water standing. And along with that, these now have become recognized as something to protect. These are fish traps. That's what I have here depicted with kind of a suggestion of fish skeleton in it. Somehow they had a way of herding fish into these stone-lined pits and kind of trapping them in there and having that as a resource for fish there. And so all of that. The lake that's there now has been the result of the Colorado River in modern historical times coming in and refilling that basin. Now it's called the Salton Sea, but here I'm depicting this as the ancient Lake Cahuilla, very, very ancient. So the culture related to that lake among the Cahuilla is itself barely a skeleton. But what I do have, if you come down here, this is a fossil bivalve mollusk from there, actually, showing the ancient marine life that once inhabited ancient Lake Cahuilla. And here's the one cultural artifact that I found, a stone grinder or a pestle in the shape of a turtle. So those are two things that I have there for that. While I'm down there, we can go over here to this piece here. It's a stone pipe bowl in the shape of a frog. And of course, frogs and lakes, I think, go together. And what it was for the ancient people, this is 2,000 years old. This is from the Adena or Hopewell culture. The pre-Cherokee culture, basically. That's where this comes from. And smoking was to make smoke. And the smoke, somehow encouraged rain, encouraged, water to come down. So that's a very ancient piece there. And over here, this very fine carving, this is a Hopi mana. So it is Hopi and not Taos. The Spanish occupation of the Southwest, especially New Mexico, was really bad. I won't go into it. It says enough for it. But also, people manage one way or another to keep something intact, the pueblos. And in the Taos Pueblo they've been talking about, they do have, a female mana like that, who is, definitely otherworldly. So I have that one here as a kind of substitute for the one from Taos. She's wearing definitely the whorls of the Hopi maidens and so forth. So that's what she is representing here. The other lake that we have, I introduced last week, is Pyramid Lake. So Pyramid Lake, we go over here and look at this. I introduced this last week. The spiritual name of Pyramid Lake, the blue shoe, Azur Horos, like there, and there's the pyramid. Pyramid Lake is an ancient lake. It's a result of the glaciers or whatever melting and leaving this huge bodies, inland water, like seas, like that. And Lake Lahontan is the modern name for one of those huge bodies of waters that, eventually dried up or soaked into the earth until Pyramid Lake, what's there now, is, this remnant of ancient lake water here. And I've called that, my alma mater from the Latin, nourishing mother. But also, in the collegiate sense, I've also cultured myself with Pyramid Lake very seriously over a matter of time, and I've had various paintings and illustrations in the course of my culturing that. And so here, this is my painting in this way, and I've written above it, this original mine is the prehensile tail of our symbolical body. So there is, the lore that a serpent, lives in the lake. And so I can depict that. But it also means something more. Also, with this culture of the lake, a group of Tibetans actually came all the way over from where they are situated in India. They came and got together with our 4th, 5th grade class, and they went out here to this lake as a homage. So the lake is also part of the Tibetan culture. So there are other people in India and the other countries that are around there, Kashmir, Bhutan, who have lake culture. That's what I'm referring to here, that there is a lake culture. In this country, whatever might be the lake culture, like for the Taos people, they've kept it undercover for very good reason. And all the way down into Mexico, like I said, the suggestion that there are lake cultures also in Mexico where I was. So that's, part of this. Now that lake is called Maharada. That is the lake there in India. And let me mention, because here on the map here, you have a couple of places or so, the name Apache. Apache is another misnomer of the Americans for people who know themselves as the Apache. The Apache means warriors of the lake. and that suggests, you know, that they were a part of at least the association with the Buddhist or the Tibetans monasteries and so forth. So Alpachu is the warriors of the lake here. And as this lake was formed in its, you know, ancient times, it produced, you know, these strange, you know, calcified formations that they call tufa. And so to have this piece I have from Pyramid Lake, made in the suggestion of a female torso, and I put other indentations around it that are carved in the rocks surrounding Pyramid Lake that belong to the ancient Great Mother culture known in Europe by Maria Gamboudas. And all the way down here, I showed this last week, this is a medallion with the pyramid in the middle and the coyote that goes with that. To refer to this, I have made, you know, this as a symbol of the Great Lake. This is the uplifted cresting wave of the water, and the bindu as, you know, expansion and contractions. So she is called the Great Lake, the infinite reservoir of living life's power. By uniting with her is the experience of the creative source. Sakti in India is the term for power that's female. So that's the way it's used. And so there are divinities, and there are also occasions where even a human female person, young or middle-aged usually, has actually been extolled as a living Sakti. So it's feminine overall that way. She is the Sakti of the world creation, and she is herself the Great Lake. So that is to say that the lake itself is her, that is her body. And I would say here very much as well. When I go over here to this painting here, this wonderful, I don't know how I can say this, master's piece by Claudia Pauquois. There is a very large stone monument, as it is natural. It's called the Stone Mother. And the Stone Mother and also the pyramid are the two symbols, icons of the Great Pyramid Lake. And Claudia has made this Stone Mother, yeah, and you see the tears coming down. So the local lore is the tears, you know, is what made the lake. So this is a very, very good rendering expression from a lake woman, a lake woman of her Pyramid Lake mother, and the pyramid there in the water. It's a wonderful, wonderful painting. The culture of the lake, you know, is prompted by the willpower of her, and that's what sets it all in motion. So the serpent here in my rendering here also stands for the currents that are in the lake, part of the lake. There's 4 currents. One of them, important, is the Gochari, which stands for movement, is the dynamic power of the spirit. So that's what I have here. You can say this is the dynamic power of the spirit. She also is known as Matrika, as her mystery is not realized, and also she is known as Malini, who holds the universe within herself. But even with that, the lake remains limpid, it remains clear. The universe does not shroud it. It's deep and not easy to understand. So that's a little bit of the rendition that I'm saying here of the culture, my alma mater of Pyramid Lake. And here, to bring this all together, I love this. This is my very dancing lady of the lake. You see, like that. And of course, you know, what's a lake without a duck? You know, here, dancing on her duck. So that is so cheerful and the most spiritual, cheerful icon I've ever seen. So there she is. And she is celebrating the return of the Taos Blue Lake, and probably celebrating her in all lakes. You like that? Very, very good. And so if I can just kind of bring this to a summation here with a poem. This is from Claudia's book. You can show it, Keeper of the Fields. Can you see it? And this is her painting on the cover. And then her poem in this book is titled The Lake. The lake rests in its landlocked cradle, rocker, by windy fingers, cold to touch. Here, sun is the welcoming host after an early spring snow melt, and without a fat layer of goose down to warm its feathered highlands. Geese roll along tall shore grasses, pulling the seeded heads off on their way to buoyancy. Their sleek necks, periscope eyes, well above their body's surface, circular and watchful. While they clutch a tool's towering stalk, red-winged blackbirds sound the lake's signature, declare their twill as if holding a blade of grass between their teeth. Buzzard is here, gracing the current with aerial gymnastics. Great blue heron is here, croaking judgments as the lake's authority. And peace is here, as three fishermen patrol the shoreline in a soundless boat, casting through the dart of a dragonfly. I hope